Today, we're taking a look at some of the best robots the FTC community has made this week for the DECODE season. So, the end of the match, it is 106 to 896. And you can see that these head refs, I'm Coach Pratt, and I've been teaching robotics and design for over a decade now. And today, we're going to take a look at some amazingly functional 3 catapults that have some pretty high throughput and some high scoring potential. Take a look at some different intakes, some design and close-up shots that some of these impressive robots have made. And we'll also take a look at some different fouled matches, including one that's been over 900 points, and talk about how you and your team might avoid that this season. So first up here, we've got a league meet, and I want you to watch this robot in the bottom left-hand corner. It's got a triple catapult system, and it's got quite a high throughput on it. It also has the ability to index these 3, and or maybe not index at the moment, but it does look like it has the ability to, because it has 3 individual catapult shooters, that it could set it up and say, we're going to fire these 3 in this pattern. And it may not have that capability now, but it certainly looks like it has the potential to set that up in the future. The reason I want to show this one is I think that a lot of teams have ridden out a catapult as a sufficient way of being able to score. I want to show this robot here at just how powerful this thing can be when it gets up and running and how quick you can set this up, especially with something wide like a nice triple wheel shooter. One thing that's going to make this one tough is having 2 robots on one base. I'm not quite sure how they might achieve or get around that problem. But it also looks like this is a quick redesign, not a quick redesign, but a redesign similar off of a concept from the EveryBot, and taking some of those ideas and reworking with that. They've clearly got a few little arms here. If you take a quick look here, as it picks up a ball, we'll switch back a little bit. Take a look at these arms up at the top, because it seems like these arms are able to sweep it into the position that they wanted to go, almost like a windshield wiper. Super cool. Really like seeing that from team 31,065. Next up here, we've got some designs here from the Golden Bears. And I think it's just really cool seeing teams being able to have these things, have their shooters so accurate already. And it's a nice seeing them test this from different positions and seeing their auto setup. So good work on that one, Golden Bears. Next up here, we've got, I want to show off this one from the Demon Dogs 22437. I think they've got, and it's the ability for this thing to shoot while it's moving. So once it's picked up the 3 balls here, come over and take a look as it comes over onto what I imagine is going to be that field shot. They might want to check that they actually are within that field shot line when they do that. But being able to launch these in and scoring while it's moving around, I think is going to be a pretty key potential for teams to be able to keep scoring, especially as the season goes by. Last tip here I want to show off from team Insanity Automotive Engineering, because I like this testing from them. They're attempting to push the robot as it is trying to score to see if they still are able to rotate their turret as it is going. I think one of the big things that a lot of teams do when they're trying to test these things is they test them under ideal conditions. And I like looking at this one because it's showing you that, hey, we're trying to test our robot in unideal conditions, because that's where you're actually going to end up performing these things. So great work on that testing process there, team. Next up on an intake here, I want to take a look at 22,411 from Wild Squirrels. They got a rubber band intake, but the rubber bands get smaller as time goes in. I think it's quite effective as an intake. It's one of those things of control it and own it. It looks like they got a little bit of hot glue on the bottom of their ramp there to give that ball just a little bit of extra friction. My guess is what was happening, and you can actually see a little bit on that purple ball at the start, is that it wants to constantly spin backwards. And watch it right here. You can see how it's trying to spin backwards until it actually catches it. So they may want to add a little bit more friction on that, or even consider bringing that first rubber band down a little bit to be able to get a little bit more compression on that ball. Or bring that ramp backwards a little bit for the start of the ramp so they don't get as much of that rotation point, because you really want to grab that ball and own it. Last thing I want to show you here is watch the 3rd ball as it comes in right here. You see how it kind of sits there? Nice thing about a rubber band or a surgical tubing intake is that you have enough compliance that it can continuously spin before you have some sort of other track that's able to push things out. It allows you to keep these things inside your robot rather securely. So nice work on that one, Team Wild Squirrels. Next up, we've got a transfer here from 24310. This is some pretty cool piece of tech here. They've got a light and a color sensor down on the bottom for some sort of functioning indexer. I think it's quite quick to be able to get that thing off and running. So we can see that they've got playing in a light there, and then be able to rotate it around as it comes back up to their hood. It looks like they've got a fixed hood position, and last thing, they have a pretty high throughput on that as well. I think that's going to be a big one for these teams to have a high throughput. If we see on their flywheel, one of the reasons they might have that higher throughput is they have these gigantic steel washers being placed in there. So that adds up a lot of extra inertia to their flywheel. And because of having that extra inertia, they can spin it up with 2 motors, and then it allows their flywheel to hold its speed better in between multiple shots. So we'll pause in here and see if we can't get a nice close-up shot here. I think a washer is a great way of getting around that problem. One thing you might consider doing is taking a thick steel plate and perhaps getting it CNC'd or plasma cut it out from a local supplier so you can get it a little bit thicker and get something a little closer to the weight on the outside. Because as you get more weight on the outside of that wheel, you're going to have more impulse to that, as opposed to having more of that weight on the inside that a washer might not get you. But of course, we can't see the side of this, so it's possible they're already doing that. Next up here, we've got a nice close-up here of blue bots, and I want to take a look at this transfer here. I love when teams get nice and close with the robots so we can actually see how things are actually going on. So thank you for sharing this one out, blue bots. I think they've got a really cool little arm here. We're going to slow this one down so we can see this a little bit better. Let's bring our playback speed down and take a look at this. So we can see here, there's this little arm that's able to kick it up and push that ball up in, and it looks like they have 3 separate arms to be able to kick things up and down. So rather than having an index, or it looks like they do have some sort of spin capabilities, they decided to go with, rather than rotating to a single arm and rotating that platform again, looks like they decided to have 3 separate balls. And they may have done that because it looks like their bot has the ability to intake on either side of the robot, which is a pretty slick little piece of kit. One thing I do wonder is having more moving points in a robot means you have more chance for things to fail, but perhaps they think that adding in an extra section actually gives them more redundancy. So that if one were to fail, then they'd have another section. And I think that decision is kind of going to come up to on team-by-team basis. Last one here is an Apex FTC. They've got a transfer system here working. And I think as far as I have no idea what's up with the skull. I am clearly not hip with the kids anymore, but they've got those Go Build a Gecko wheels that you cut from the DECODE season. And then they've just got a simple, quick chain that's able to get these things moving up and running. I think it works pretty well. I'll want to share one comment on this. Your chain is a little bit loose. As this thing rotates around, you can actually see it skip a tooth right there. So get your chain just a little bit tighter, especially as you're working on these kind of odd custom angles as you're working across these things. You may want to consider moving your other motor up a little bit so you can have or add in a chain tensioner. But it looks like you could probably take a link out of there. While I cannot show this next video from JFK Robotics with the sound on because they've got some music in here that unfortunately I can't take, it's really cool to see that they're going in, taking a look at quick design shots on their robot over time, showing you how it is they're designing and showing it's how it's really working. And the speaker here is really knowledgeable about how their robot design works. I think this is a really impressive piece of work and a really impressive shot that I think everyone should go take a look at for this Buy the Hot Bot 11.6 by JFK Robotics. Some really interesting engineering going, also some pretty cool editing that goes on. So nice work on that team there. Last up, we've got some things from the autonomous here. We've got a 12-point autonomous from Team Fizmat Robotics. One thing I think we might see as a quick kind of early meta that's starting to develop here is teams will get 3 robots in, come pick up the next 3, then open up the gate, and then try to get another 9 in here. And it looks like, at least from what this robot is saying, they're able to get 12 in, but it looks like they may have missed 1. One thing I want to talk about on these autos, again, as we talk about this take it and own it, when you look at that front little compliant wheel section, right at the front, there's might not be just enough to keep it in reliably because you notice that ball kicks it out a little bit. In any case, excellent job from this team being able to launch in so many balls in autonomous so early in the season. And I love to see where you're taking this. Next up, I want to show you a little solo match here from Why Are We Doing This? Because I think that from team 3564, they've got a great little 3 rubber band robot that ends up running it right up an intake. I've seen a lot of teams introduce something like this, and I just want to show that it's a pretty viable competition strategy. It looks like they've got surgical tubing running around there or some sort of rubber band tubing wrapped around some wheels. They have a little servo that's able to kick these things up and into their main flywheel. And it's a pretty accurate little design having 2 vertical flywheels. Overall, nice work on that, having such a successful autonomous all the way to the start. And the last thing I want to talk about here is this match here from Bulls. So as this match gets underway, I want you to watch this robot in the bottom right-hand corner. This is part of the Red Alliance, and the first thing they do, it looks like they're running perhaps their Blue Alliance, autonomous, something along those lines. But the first thing this robot does is it drives into the opposing alliance's loading zone, and that ends up being a big issue for them as this match starts up. So it looks like they stop their autonomous once they're in there, or there was a disconnect, something along those lines. I'm not quite sure. This is a really cool design as we're waiting for the autonomous to be done. There are 3 individual shooters. They come on up and they pick it up from the side for this autonomous. I think that's really slick. That's a great way of getting 3 balls in at once, and it looks like it's pretty accurate to be able to line up those 3. And it looks like they don't have indexing capabilities yet, but it definitely has the ability to have indexing in the future. So very slick work on that. Love seeing that. So here is where I think there's a lot of contention coming up on the score. But if you've watched my latest video on how the scoring points work, take a look at what the Blue Alliance is doing here. Because they're inside this human player zone, you end up with a minor foul every single time that this blue robot connects this red robot. I believe it starts getting scored incorrectly at the start here because this robot's trying to get in. I believe that this robot, it seems to be disconnecting, but it also seems to be able to get in. So these fouls are actually, I think they're going the right direction at the start here, in that it should be a foul against the blue team, but then the referee swaps it around. And again, this is my opinion on where I think things are going. But if we look at these rules here, if you're inside your opposing alliance zone and you end up getting contacted, that is a minor penalty against your team because you're in the opposing alliances, regardless of who initiated contact. But now at this point, as things keep going, the Blue Alliance is doing, I think it's rule G206, something along those lines, somewhere in that category, where they are causing their opposing team to forfeit points, and they're causing them to go against the rules here. And it's pretty clear this robot could be able to pick things up from the side here inside this human zone. And now they're doing something called penalty farming, which in my opinion goes against the spirit of the game. So we can see this robot's able to eventually make its way out. There's a pretty high amount of penalty farming going on there. So even though it may be advantageous, I think teams are going to be thinking about that as their robots are coming into their other section. It may be advantageous to try to penalty farm, get some of those points. It is something to think about is this against the spirit of the game? And I think one of the spirits of the game is this what it is? What we're trying to score points from this is actually get you artifacts into the goal. In my opinion, no, it doesn't. I think this match may have been scored incorrectly, but again, it's really hard to judge on these things, especially when you can talk about video playback in the future. And hindsight is 20/20 on all these things. So it'll be interesting to see whether there's an official first Q&A on whether this match comes out or not. But I foresee matches not being scored like this in the future just because of the intention to end up breaking the rule in that respect and that causing your opposing alliance to get some of those foul points. Not a very cool call. But again, this isn't necessarily me trying to call out another team as well. It's just more talking about some of the spirit of this in general. So the end of the match, it is 106 to 896. And you can see that these head refs are trying to collaborate with each other to try to see how this scoring ends up going. If you're looking for access to more robotics resources, you can consider joining my community down below on broganpratt.com. You can get access to CAD files, code snippets, and then some individual comments from myself as well on your projects. If you want to submit future things to FTC Fridays and get your team potentially featured, or you see a really cool robotics match that you think is worthwhile for other teams to see, submit it down in the link below. And as always, best of luck out there this season.